Hi. Well, folks, the weather in the UK is absolutely horrendous, so it's time to get some building done. Buckle up, more covering to come. This time it's Tony Ray's Tiger Moth, the fuselage. Let's get started. Well, then, folks, here's the task ahead. It's time to cover the fuselage. Now, normally, this is a very complicated task in the sense that you've got to work around things like cabins if you're talking about a biplane, and it can be rather awkward. In this case, with this Tony Ray design, the awkwardness is in the fact that I'm going to have to screw everything off now. Now that I've got it all fitted, it's going to have to all come off, and that will make the covering process far more easy. So let's get cracking and get it all stripped back. Well, that's the undercarriage off. Now, all I'm going to do is methodically work through the rest of the fuselage, removing anything that's basically screwed on. And then we'll start the process of prepping the fuselage ready for covering. That's all the hardware removed. So I'm going to give the fuselage a rub down now. It hasn't received that actually, it's just been put together. Give it a rub down and then I'll give it a coat of Mod Podge to prep it for the covering process. Okay, the preparation is going to involve covering all the sheeted area in Mod Podge and the edges where the covering will be applied. Obviously, you don't need to cover or do any of these parts that won't be touched by the covering, or even this central rail, which will just pull across. So I'm going to prep all of that, get it painted on, start the process now, and it also helps toughen up the balsa, which in some places is on the soft side. Soft generally equals lighter, so I'm not complaining at that. So I'm going to give it 2 coats, coffee break or lunch in between probably, and then I can let it dry. In actual fact, I may even start this tomorrow. I've got other things to do. You can leave it any amount of time, it doesn't matter, because you're going to reactivate it by the application of the iron. So you don't need to worry about how long you leave it. That's not critical at all, other than letting it dry properly. So I'll crack on with this, get it prepped, and then the next time you see that after the break, a few seconds for you, I'll actually be starting the covering process itself. But this is the preparation. Give it a couple of coats of Mod Podge. And Mod Podge is by far the best medium to use. As I've said before, when covering the wings, you can get away with PVA at a pinch, but it doesn't give as good a seal or as good an adhesion as the Mod Podge does. It's not mega expensive, I don't think, and it goes an awful long way. So I'll crack on with this, and when we click back, I'll actually start the covering process. Okay, let's start covering, folks. Everything's dry. I'll just move this chair. I've got a nice generous amount of material there. Start from the bottom, do the sides, one piece for the turtle deck on the top. That's the plan anyway. So here goes. The iron's set just over halfway on this pretty rudimentary iron, nothing fancy here. Tack the end. Make sure that the heat's transferring through onto this solid piece. I will have to cut this out to make a hatch. I actually glued a piece in of wood, much to Cliff Harvey's mirth when he realised what I'd done, because he was ahead of me in the build. But anyway, that came back out. This isn't a hatch to load a battery, of course, but you do need it open so that you can get to the rigging wires for the cabin structure. So we all make mistakes. Sometimes you make more than one. Hands up everybody who's built 2 port wings before. It happens. Okay, I'm putting a little bit of tension on this. There you go. And wherever it's sheeted, I'm sticking all the cloth to it. And now, what I'm going to do is just tack down one side in segments, put a little bit of tension on. I honestly think the trick to working with this polyester cloth is to get as much of the tension into the structure as you can before you apply heat to shrink it. It doesn't shrink massively, it shrinks enough, but you want to help it on its way by getting it taut before you apply any heat. And that way it's likely to stay where you want it. Those of you who've followed some of the other videos will know that a chap, Darren, I'm sure it's Darren, I am terrible with names, you know, who's been working on a half scale model, has had some trouble applying the cloth. It's gone fine when he's heated it. When he's applied the daub, it's become slack. I don't know what the current state of affairs is with that. I'm wishing him luck. He's quite a positive sort of chap, I think, because he's sort of taking it with a grin and just starting again. And I think he's enjoying the sort of process of learning. Good for him. I have said it before, I'll repeat it now. We often learn more, I think, from mistakes that we make than when something goes right first time. My daughter, a while back, when she was a student, in fact, was trying a particularly difficult textile technique and was getting really frustrated with it. She was sitting at home doing it and it just wasn't working. And I disappeared out of the living room and came back with a box of pieces of brass, and she looked at me rather puzzled and wondered what I was trying to say to her or getting at. And I pointed out that every piece in that box was a mistake that I'd made when I was doing some machining, because it was new to me. But I said that each time I'd made a mistake, I'd learned a little bit more. And sometimes I think there's an urge of instant gratification that it's got to be right first time, and it's just not possible. You get better the more you do it, and every time you do something and it doesn't go right, hopefully we learn from that. Right, that, as you can see, is fairly tense already. It's quite a bit of, there are no really discernible creases. You notice I'm moving the iron out to keep it tight. But what I'm going to do now is paint, I'll flick it over, paint some thin down Mod Podge all the way around the edge, and that means I can get a nice neat line that won't fray when I'm trimming it up, and I can fold that round ready for one of the sides. Let's get that done now. I've painted along the edge here with a thin down solution. It's dried, and that allows me to trim the cloth without any fear of it fraying. Of course, what else helps is using these pinking shears. It doesn't really matter a great deal because this will be covered by the side, but when the side comes over to the bottom, I'll use these pinking shears to produce a nice neat cut. So I'm just letting the scissors run along the edge of the structure to give an even overlap. Of course, everything would have been a lot more difficult if I was fighting my way around cabin structures and undercarriage. Many designs you have no say in that matter. It's just the way it is. But as most of those features, in fact all of them, are bolted on in this design, we can cut them off there, take them off. There you go. Now, the iron's beginning to heat up, and I can fold this over. Bring that round so you can see better perhaps. There we go, it's going on nicely. Now the iron will get some glue along it, which I need to remove, and what I do is I turn it off, and then as it warms up again when I turn it back on, I'll use a cloth with some thinners to wipe off the excess glue. Now what I'll do is, once this is sealed all the way along, is I'll paint some Mod Podge along the bottom here so that I can fold it over, and Mod Podge along the side, because remember, this is your adhesive. Unlike Oratex, which is covered over the whole surface, I'm saving weight because the glue is only where you need it. Right, so I've got to repeat that for the other side, and once that's done, I'll paint Mod Podge along the sides, and then I'll start putting the sides on. Sides next, then the turtle deck. Let's crack on, folks. Now that the lower level, the bottom of the fuselage has been covered, I've preliminarily cut this out, and you need to take a little bit more care with the sides because obviously they're a bit more visible. And my approach to this is to produce a nice neat edge here and allow a surplus here, because this is what will be trimmed off. I've actually used crimping or pinking shears to produce a free edge. Takes some saying with my jaw that. If you wanted a straight edge or you didn't have the pinking shears, I would advise that you paint along this with a thin down solution of Mod Podge, let it dry, and then when you cut it out with the scissors you won't get any fraying, which can be quite irritating and spoil the overall finish. There's an area here which needs to be cut out or slot put in place. So what I'm going to do is mark that where that needs to be, and I'm actually going to apply some of that Mod Podge. In fact, I think perhaps I could just apply the Mod Podge straight. If I can find a brush, give me a second. Okay, I found a pencil and a brush, so I've got everything I need. So I'll just line this up, and if I apply some thin down Mod Podge to this area here, when I cut it, I'll get a nice free edge. Goodness me, that's hard to say with me. Okay, I'll let that dry. When you cut, I'll come back to the video. I'll have a slot there and I'll be able to place it in position, and we'll start putting this in place. Here we are back again. I've now cut a nice neat slot in there, and there's no fraying, so it keeps it all nice, neat and tidy. I've just clicked the iron back on. While it's warming up, I can remove some of the glue that invariably gets onto the surface. Put a little bit of thinners on there to help remove it. There we go. All ready to start, just about anyway. So same rules along the length to begin, so I'll tack it here. So it's secured at this end. I'm going to turn it around just to keep it easier to work with and so you can see it. Excuse me. Don't have to go crazy with the tension, but I just want to keep a little bit on there. So that's it secured along the length. Now, I want a nice neat edge here, so what I'm going to do is secure it on this side first and then pull it that way to pull it across to form the shape of the covering over the stringer. So I'll just tack it here. There we go, it's now secured along there. And pulling away, I'll start in the centre, just tack along the edge. Make sure it's secure here. Yep, oh, that's the ruler away. It appears to have a little bit of excess material to hold on to. And this stuff's so cheap, it's silly not to scrimp. Okay, flick it round. Now I'm pulling the covering towards me. Making sure that's secure, and it is. Now I've put Mod Podge along the edge and over the underside. But I want a nice neat edge once again, so what I'll do is put the thin down Mod Podge along this edge. We'll leave it for a little bit to dry, and then I'll produce a nice clean cut all the way along. Before I fold it over. So I'll do that now. Obviously this is what adds a little bit of time to the process, but I find it enjoyable as long as I do it in segments and I don't do all of the covering at once. Obviously you've seen a lot of videos recently and that's all I seem to have been doing. But that's been staggered over a few days and I've been covering two different models. This Tony Ray design and an old flare kit of a Fokker D7. Very different models in sort of concept and how they've been made. I'm sure they'll provide a lot of pleasure in the future in their own right, and they've been both pleasurable to build. There's a guarantee that the flare model is going to be a successful flyer because I already own one. I may get rid of that when I finish this one. And I know that this will work. I've seen Cliff Harvey's model fly and I've seen Tony Ray's prototype fly with a nitro engine in it, which is what I'm intending to do. So I know that the thing will fly. There we go. Let that dry, and when it's dry we'll come back. I'll trim it nice and neatly and fold it over. I'll do the other side, not on camera. You don't need to see both sides done. And then I'll show you how I'm going to do the turtle decking. Back in a mo. I've trimmed this up now, produced a nice neat edge. You simply need to iron it on, and then once it's ironed on, obviously I have to do the other side, but once it's ironed on, I'll seal this with some dope, and that's because I just don't want any chance of it pulling away from the surface. And I find the layer of dope, full strength dope, get a bit tangled up here, full strength dope is what you need to use. And I'm pushing it in, not going along, I'm pushing it in. Hope that was in view, I was going off a little bit, sorry. As you go along, nice and neat. There we go. Happy with that. I'll do up along the edges, as I've just said. Oh, forgot a bit here. This needs to be ironed over. Now there needs to be a piece inserted in here. I'll show you what I mean. Make sure you can see it. Are we in focus? Yeah, we are. So obviously when this goes on here, it needs an infill in this area, and I'll do that and cover it ready to put in place once it's all glued. The tail surfaces are glued on. Right, I'll do the other side, and then once the other side's done, I'll show you how I'm going to tackle this sheeted area and the turtle decking to get a nice neat finish. Let's get going. Before I move on to the turtle decking, I'm going to seal around the edge with some full strength dope, because I just want to ensure that this covering will not pull away when I start shrinking it. It's exactly the same approach as I took with the wings, because obviously you don't want to cause it to shrink, and then that shrinkage pulls the covering loose from the grip. I don't think it ever would, but you know, belt and braces sort of guy. It takes a few moments to do this, so why not do it? Right, I'll crack on with this. Once it's all sealed, we'll turn our attention to the upper deck. Right, turtle decking to do. I've got a nice crisp edge here. I'm going to start, this mightn't work, but we'll see. I'm going to start along here, tack this in place. So I've got a nice edge. And then I'm just going to run the iron round like that. And I'll trim it when I get to the other side. I've just realised there's a bit there that might need doing separately. Right, I'll turn this round, I think. That seems to be going over okay. Let's keep it going. I'm generally happy with that, yeah. It's fully bonded. Of course, it's going to get the dope over the top of it as well. This is a little bit ragged round here, but once it's... I'm just going to cut this piece here. Just looked a little bit untidy. There we go, happy with that. Now, I'll give that a coat of dope and then trim this off flush because you have the combing going around here. I'll repeat for this and then I'll come back to you when I'm doing this rear turtle deck and you can see me do that. All good so far. Keep it up, Mark. I think the best way to approach this turtle deck is to get a nice clean edge on one side, leave the surplus and then trim it in situ. So, well, that's the theory. Let's see if it works in practice. Never know till you try. Yeah, get it nice and straight. That's the idea. Once I've got one side anchored, I can pull it over. Well, that's the theory anyway. Right. It's in place. That's it. stretch it over. It will stretch really well. I discovered this when I was covering the Junkmeister, because I didn't know if it would work, but I was able to actually cover the whole fuselage in 2 pieces, compound curves and all. Take it over the top a little bit. You've probably seen the back of my arm here. Or the top of me head, as they say in the northeast. Right, flick it round. It's going to come over, and then I'll be able to trim the excess off. I don't want to get it stuck down too close to the cutting point, but I want it approximately where I need it. Exciting stuff, eh? Right, I'm going to trim or mark on what I need to trim. Do that and then I'll pop back. There we have it, turtle deck covered. It'll be taped along this joint, which will look neat, I think. I'm going to do up around here and then cut this out and tidy it up, and then we'll have a look at the finished process once I've shrunk this and have an application of dope on it. I'll come back when it's all finished. Well, there we have it. That's 1 coat of dope. It'll need another one, at least another one. I've missed a patch there, I've just noticed. It'll need another one, but I'll do that when I do the wings, the other set of wings rather. Goes on, you know, rather well. You need to take a little bit of care when you're using the iron, or particularly if you're using the heat gun, that you don't overdo it. I managed to burn a hole in there. I'm fessing up here, and there's a patch on, but once it's doped and sanded down, you'll never see that. I hope you found that useful. We're getting there. 1 more set of wings to do, and then it's time to start thinking about getting that scheme on. I'll not put any of the hardware back on yet. It doesn't make sense, actually. I'll get it all done in one go. I'll spray that separately and then bolt it on when it's all done and finished and fuel proofed, etc. Take care, folks. Please give it a thumbs up. It always helps. And if you haven't subscribed, why not do so? And then you can join in the fun. Let's all get creative. Take care.